whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today, but if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you are blessed and doing safe. Tonight, it is Random Topic Sundays, and it is a special celebrity deaths. We will discuss the death of one Ennis Cosby. Now, if you see here on the screen, Ennis Cosby was the only son of Camille and Bill, doctors Bill and Camille Cosby. Excuse me for stumbling there. And on January 1997, along the 405 freeway, Ennis Cosby's life was cut short based off of an attempted armed robbery that had occurred while he was supposedly waiting on a friend to fix a flat tire. Very interesting story how Bill Cosby named Ennis Cosby Ennis is that all of his children have the letter E in their first name, and it's spelled for a reason, and that was because E stood for excellence. So when you look at his children, such as Ensa, Aaron, Evan, Ennis, and I believe the other daughter, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, her name escapes me right now, uh, if I have it correctly. But out of all of those children, obviously Bill Cosby, of course, I'm not going to say he wasn't close to them, but Ennis Cosby certainly being his only son, we know sons. The sad thing about losing a son is that your name is no longer, your son carries on your name, your last name. And that's the special thing about that. And Bill Cosby lost something on January 19th, 1997 by Mikhail Makasev. Now, I'll show you his face in a little bit. He was actually in our I actually had it here in our live stream. I'll pull it up right quick. But Bill Cosby sent all of his children, he sent Ennis Cosby in particular to Morehouse College. He wanted his kids to attend his son to attend an HBCU, which Bill Cosby has always been supportive of, and his wife, Camille. And this is a picture of the killer, Makasev, who's a Ukrainian-born immigrant, reportedly showed no remorse for his crime. And this is the blog. However, in 2001, he confessed his guilt, stopped his appeals process, and apologized to the Cosby family. The Cosby family, very interesting, did not seek the death penalty in this case when he was apprehended. But so the case is closed. However, there are questions that still surround it that many people have. And in light of what has happened when transpired with Dr. Cosby with regards to his criminal trials and his accusations that he has faced in recent years, some of these things have resurfaced. And so tonight on this broadcast, we are going to go into the circumstances of that death and also the circumstances that may surround, perhaps what he's going on with him personally and also with his trial. Do these things play a role in that? We will go and dig in with that. Joined Joining me, of course, is a man who is no stranger to the show. It's none other than Albert Lanier Jr. And let me turn on my camera. What's going on, Al?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing good, sir. I'm doing all right. Normally, you guys see me in the studio. It's a little bit different tonight because the air conditioning doesn't work on that side. So that was going to be problematic. So I'm back in my old spot, which was right here, right in front of my closet doors. So it's good to be back home. So to uh, let's tune in, tune out. I won't be playing my theme music right now too because of other reasons why I just refuse to because I don't feel like dealing with getting a copyright strike on my own song. But let us go in and discuss this now. Al, how's it going out there in Hawaii, the Aloha State?
I guess it's all right. People are dealing with COVID here or the pandemic just like they are anywhere else. I'm sure. Same in Louisiana. They're dealing with it. I don't know what the extent of it is in Louisiana, but other than that, it's summertime. People are trying to enjoy the summer.
Yeah. Before everybody goes back to school, people will be going back to school in about a week. But I know school starts for my girlfriend. Her students, I think, are coming in this week. Yeah, but now, of course, with COVID-19 rates going back up and the Delta variant, who knows if this thing gets pulled again and they're forced to do virtual lessons right now and so forth. But let's talk about the death of Ennis Cosby. We do celebrity deaths. This was something I wanted to cover in light of what was going on with the Cosby, with Bill Cosby's recent criminal cases that he had, because that always came, I wondered about what was going on with him and what happened with his son. And a lot of people have even speculated over the years about what really happened in his death, based off of his business ventures. But first, I think it's important to talk about who Ennis Cosby was. Al, why don't you start and just tell us a little bit about Ennis, if you know anything from what you've gathered.
Well, Ennis was, as you mentioned a good amount of it. Ennis was, I believe, was the only son of Cosby.
Yes.
And he was, I believe, a child. He actually, as per the family's lifestyle, they were in, I think, about 3 states. They had to kind of move between 3 states. I think Massachusetts may have been one of them. I'm trying to remember correctly. California was one. I think it was New York, and then maybe
they have a home in Massachusetts, and they also have a home in New York, from my understanding. And of course, Bill Cosby has his house in Philadelphia. The reason why I think he lived in New York, the Cosby Show was actually filmed out there, as well as his other show that he had on CBS in at the time of Ennis's death, was a show on CBS called Cosby. That was that was his third show he did after the Cosby Show, because after that he had a show called This Is Your Life that aired on NBC. It didn't do well in syndication, and then he subsequently went over to CBS when Les Moonves became the head of CBS, and they got the show that was based off of a Britain show. And yeah, so Cosby, long story short to what you're saying, yeah, he lived in New York. Yeah. So, you can continue.
Yeah. So he had, I believe, he went to a private school. Go ahead. Ennis Cosby went to a private school from dyslexia. So that was an issue. And I think from what I recall researching, when he found out that he had dyslexia, it was actually, he considered it one of the most, I guess it was a relief in a sense, because he realized that his problems in school, because he had been a pretty good athlete, but he had academic issues and problems. I think he realized that it wasn't his fault. It wasn't something, it's not that he was a bad student or just not bright or effective. It was because of this dyslexia, which from what I recall, it has to do, dyslexia, if I recall correctly, I'm not an expert on dyslexia, but dyslexia, of course, has to do with how people take in information, written information, exactly, words, written information.
Well, if you look here,
And
I think
so,
what.
um,
Wait,
as you
wait,
mentioned,
Al.
he went
Al,
on to go to a HBCU.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. It seemed
Yeah, I
like there
can.
was some lag.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there was some lag going on. What I was trying to say before you continued, and I don't know if anybody can read what's here, but this is a Wikipedia page on Ennis Cosby. You can go look at it. He was suffered from dyslexia, which is, according to this, is a reading disorder characterized by trouble with reading despite normal intelligence. So different people are affected to different degrees, and problems may include difficulties in spelling words, reading quickly, writing words, sounding out words in head, and so forth. So it's a type of reading disorder or learning disorder. And what happened, of course, Bill Cosby, I think, was also relieved because he found out, in the Cosby Show. What's interesting is that all of those children mirrored Bill Cosby's life. He had 5 children on the TV show. He had 5 children in real life with his wife Camille. Uh, he actually, in the TV show, the character Theo, who was based off of Ennis, he struggled with dyslexia on the show as well. And Bill Cosby, I think, felt guilty about it because he felt there was a character flaw with Ennis's character, but in reality, what he found out was this disorder. And Ennis eventually got his doctorate in special education from Columbia University. He was diagnosed with dyslexia when he entered into Morehouse College, and so uh, he planned to set up a school for children with learning disabilities. And a lot of people say he was a very friendly, outgoing person. He would always greet people by saying "hello, friend," which is why Bill Cosby wears that shirt, that sweater that says "hello, friend." But go ahead, brother. You are still talking. You.
No, I think you're providing a lot of details about Ennis himself. So Ennis himself, we're getting into his background. Like I said, he, as you had mentioned, suffered from dyslexia. And again, I think when you look at the family dynamic, Cosby, I think, was a little tough on him. And I think when it was found out he had dyslexia, I think it was a relief to both the father and the son.
Yeah.
And from all accounts, Ennis Cosby was a fine young man, and a guy who was, I think, dedicated eventually teaching. Like I said, he attended an HBCU, I believe it was Morehouse, and graduated. And he was at the time a grad student at Columbia University, I believe, Teachers College, which is perhaps one of the best known training facilities for teachers, academic training facilities for teachers in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So he was getting, I believe, his master's, either was a master's or PhD. I'm not.
He got his doctorate. He got
He
a
was
doctorate.
a grad student at
But what I was saying, and I don't know
Columbia
if you
University.
can hear me. Yeah, I just said that.
That's a little of his point as Bill Cosby. I think he was a very friendly person. In fact, he used to refer from. Sorry.
Yeah, we breaking up every now and then. There's a lag of, I think there's some type of lag whenever we talk or so forth. One
Yeah, it
person
sounds like
speaks,
it.
so that happens. But no, what you
Yeah.
said, I had told everybody the same thing, and yes, he got his doctorate from Columbia University, and he was trying to set up a school for children with disabilities. Right after he got his doctorate, which, if you all look online here, I have it here, and I don't know if you can see that close, or if you need me to zoom in, but it states right here that at the time of his passing, which was at the time of his death at age 27, he was working towards his doctorate. So he would have had his doctorate had he not been killed, and he was planning on setting up a school for children with learning disabilities. And he said when he found out he was dyslexic, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He says, the happiest day of my life occurred when I found out I was dyslexic. I believe that life is finding solutions, and the worst feeling to me is confusion. Ennis had his catchphrase when greeting people, he would say, "Hello, friend." And that greeting became his legacy as described in the children's television show Little Bill, created by his father. They had that phrase put as his epitaph on his grave. So, yeah, Bill Cosby was real close with his child. Go ahead, Al. So you had any more to say on this?
Not really. I mean, he was in Columbia University. Like I said, as you mentioned, his goal was eventually to open up a school. I think for children with learning disabilities,
Yes,
dyslexia, and probably other learning disabilities. So that was his goal. That was what he wanted to do.
yes, yes. And so that was at the time he was born in 1969 on April 15th. He was killed on January 16th, 1997. So at the time of his death, he was in his mid to late 20s, about 27 years old, roughly. Still had a lot of life to give. So we go to the night in question. I think
Mhm.
everybody knows who Bill Cosby and Camille Cosby are. Apparently, I don't think we need to go run down on
Mhm.
who they are for everyone, but we already know who they are. We've established that. But what do we know about what happened on January 16th, 1997? Now, Al, you can provide some details, and I have some details. But I do want to talk about something very interesting about Bill Cosby as it ties in. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that this is the reason why or motive or why Bill Cosby's son was killed or murdered. However, I have some information that, of course, I've looked into that I thought has been interesting that I will discuss with everyone. You've probably heard me talk about it a little bit before, but I will discuss it again. But let's talk about the night in question, Al. So January 16th, 1997.
Right.
Uh,
Well, the night in question was January, as you mentioned, January 16th, 1997. Apparently, this took place at about 1:30 a.m. in the morning. Now, Ennis Cosby was in Los Angeles. He'd flown into Los Angeles, I believe, to visit a friend of his. Her name was, I believe, Stephanie Crane, who my understanding is a relative of,
right.
I think it was
She's
Melissa
a relative of
Gilbert,
the Gilberts.
and yeah,
But yeah,
Melissa
Melissa
Gilbert used
and
to be on
Sarah
Little House on the
Gilbert.
Prairie. Right.
Right. And Sarah
Sarah Gilbert,
Gilbert
right.
is also
So
on
yeah, that's
Roseanne.
a right. The relative, that's Stephanie Crane's a relative of theirs. So Ennis Cosby had flown in to see her because it's a friend of his. And apparently the car that he was in was a Mercedes SL convertible. And his Mercedes had got a flat tire. So what happened was he apparently had called Stephanie to come out to where he was. And I think this was, he was on Interstate 405 near Mulholland Drive from the accounts that I've looked up. I think he was driving down Sepulveda Pass. Now, the reason, my understanding is the reason that he called Stephanie to come to where he was he wanted her to drive out there and shine her car lights on him while he was fixing the tire. So that's what was going on reportedly at the time of this incident. Ennis Cosby had a flat tire of his car, his Mercedes SL convertible, which I believe was a very expensive car, upscale car. I think it was at least worth, it was like $130,000 car.
And this is on the 405 freeway.
Right. It was near Mulholland Drive, which is a well-known area in LA. I used to live in LA. I've lived in LA twice. So the name Mulholland Drive is familiar to anyone who lives in LA or has lived in LA. And so that's what's important to keep in mind.
Sepulveda Pass.
Sepulveda, yeah.
Sepulveda Pass, yeah.
Sepulveda Pass. Now, here's what people have to keep in mind here. He's there because his car's broken down. Primarily the tire is flat. So he's there trying to fix a flat tire. He calls his friend to come out, and then so that she can bring her car and shine the car lights on him, provide him with enough light so that he can fix the tire. That is reportedly the situation that Ennis Cosby was in at the time. Now, reportedly, at some point, at the time, an unknown assailant or an individual had come up to the driver's window of Stephanie Crane's car, reportedly, and told her with a gun drawn and supposedly aimed at her. This individual had told her, "Get out, go." I'm paraphrasing, but I'm just stating that the individual had a gun out, gun drawn, reportedly, and told her to leave, to go.
Well, here's the thing, specifically. Well, two things, Al. When I'm looking at what she testified in court, and I'll put it up and share it with everybody, she said that the man came to her door. This is what she testified in court. She said he came up to the door and told her to, quote, "Open the door or I'll harm you," which sounds, either way, open the door, I'll harm you. Not I'll kill you, I'll harm you.
Right. So if she testified that in court, now what's reported in the general media is that she was told to get out. She's told to go and leave. So if she testified to that at court, that implies that he's giving her a more specific command, right? Because he's saying, if you open the door, I'm going to do something to you. You state harm. If he has a gun, which is what he reportedly had, then it's clear what the harm is going to be. Right. But that's basically more specific than telling somebody you need to go, get out of here, right? Basically, it's basically akin to, again, the phrase again that you mentioned was what?
He says, "Open the door or I'll harm you." In other words, you open your door. I don't know what he's going to do once you open the door, but he obviously wants her either to get out or get in there, according to what she's stating. But what you said, what was reported initially, I guess, from her statements from the police, was that he told her to get out of here, which is a more command of, you're not supposed to be here. So what was this person?
See, that's very different.
There? Right, it is. The other thing, too, let's talk about the car.
Right. So let's talk about that. That's a discrepancy right there. Because what's reported in the general media, and you always have to wonder about what's reported in general media, whether it's YouTube or elsewhere, was that he came up to the driver's window of the car and told her with a gun aimed at her, basically, get out of here, or something along that line, akin to that line, get out. Now that, and reportedly, if you believe the reports that are in the general media, including YouTube and other outlets, she basically drove her car off. She got out of there.
Right. And either way, she got out of there.
Right. Now, this other quote, which is open the door or I'll harm you, again, we're seeing that she supposedly testified to in court, if this is to be believed, is different. See, that's different. Again, I want to stress that's more specific, because it implies cause and effect, right? But the point here is this. Here's the main point. Stephanie Crane is the important person in regards to this case, because you have Ennis Cosby, whose car reportedly had a flat tire that he was supposedly working on, and they're supposedly trying to fix.
Right.
And you have Stephanie Crane that was there. And so some individual at the time unknown had come up to her and essentially was trying to get her to get out of there. That's the general gist of what was going on. This individual was trying at the time to basically tell her, you need to get out of here, or you don't want to be involved in this. In essence, that's essentially what he was trying to do. Oh, excuse me.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, the main thing that also that interests me too is the car. My understanding is that the car, as we pointed out, was a Mercedes Benz, and
right, it's a Mercedes SL convertible,
a green-colored Mercedes Benz SL convertible. My understanding is that it had a run flat tire, meaning that there are cars that are capable. I've heard this. Dick Gregory has even said this about Cosby with that case, is that the car was capable of being able to run, or you could drive it even if it were flat. So
in other words, the point that you're making here now is that with this model of Mercedes, your argument is that a flat tire would not have stopped someone from continuing to drive the car.
Correct.
I believe that's the point.
Well, that's the point that a lot of people, that's the point I'm making, but it's something that a lot of people have stated. Why did he have to change it if this car was a run flat? Why was she there to help him? Supposedly, I'm not mistaken, I think this is important to point out, they had dinner earlier that night with some friends, and I believe she comes back when she gets the call, and she's wearing, I believe, still her outfit that she had on from that night with Ennis. No, she didn't change clothes. She didn't have sweats on or change of shirt and tennis shoes. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, but she was still wearing her same outfit. Now, this is 1 o'clock. I don't know how late they had been out. Obviously, it may have not been that long if they're out with friends in California from a party or get together. Who knows what they were doing and what time he got out of there, but what was the time difference and how far away she was? Those are other questions we have to ask. But nevertheless, I don't know. But nevertheless, and then the other thing I think about it too, somebody like him, if there was a tire problem, you could call AAA. I don't know if he had that either at that time. But, all of those was just thinking, and maybe he thought this was his friend, but nevertheless, it just seems interesting when you have all of those you add all of those circumstances together.
Right. So let's backtrack a little here. I mentioned that you have an individual, Stephanie Crane, who's the basically major witness or non-witness, just a basic individual at the scene of what became the crime. She had come out because Ennis had wanted her to come out because his tire was flat with his car, and he needed her car lights to shine on him while he was, I guess, trying to change the flat. And reportedly, an individual who was unknown at the time had come up to her driver's window of her car with a gun brandished at her, aimed at her, gun brandished aimed at her, and told her, depending on what you see, you know, what you look at. If you look at the media, it's basically some of the media reports. It's, you know, she's told to get out of there. And then you have reportedly what you note she stated in the trial,
right?
Which was
Open the door,
a little different. Open your door, you'll harm you. Right? So that's curious. That's curious detail number one. Now we have curious detail number two, which is the car. And that's probably the more important issue here, because it's the car that is said to be the source of why Ennis Cosby was at the 405 near Mulholland Drive. It was that he had a flat tire. Now, with this model of car, which is a Mercedes SL convertible, you have to look at if it is true that a flat would not have stopped this car from being driven, depending on how far Ennis needed to drive, you know, because he was there to visit Stephanie Crane, who was a friend of his.
Was this just a friend or a girlfriend? We got to clarify that too. This was just a.
My knowledge is friend. I don't know that they were an item. All I know is that they were a friend. Yeah. Right. So the car. So we have to look at this. So we have to look at the car. And so the important point is, one, could Cosby have driven this car to, I guess, his hotel or wherever he was going, even with the flat tire on this model? And two, was it necessary for him to get out, and if he had a flat tire, was it necessary for him to get out and change the tire at this location, at this time of the night? Right. And I think you also have to ask some other questions, which is, as you mentioned, why not call for something like AAA roadside assistance? Now, I don't know whether he was a AAA member or not, but normally when you have a problem with a car and you have that kind of, you know, when you're signed up with AAA or some other system service, you can call them, I think even at certain times of the night, and they can come in and deal with that. So I think that's another interesting question. So to me, and that's one thing in this case that I wondered about was, why is a guy driving an expensive car like that? Why does he have to change the tire basically in early morning hours of the night on the side of a road?
Yeah.
And what's also odd to me is that supposedly he would call his friend to come in and shine car lights on him while he was driving. Now that's not illogical, it's logical, but I'm wondering, there may not have been another source of light in the area, which is why that happened. But to me, it strikes me, I don't know, I get a little suspicious about it.
Right.
It's not illogical. It's perfect, you know, it's feasible, but something doesn't add up about it. So
something doesn't add up about it.
Detail number one. So you have curious detail number one, which is what ostensibly what was said to Stephanie Crane by this at the time unknown individual,
right?
Who threatened her, told her to leave. Two is the car itself and the fact that it supposedly had a flat tire and what was happening there. And three, I would add detail number three, was that Stephanie Crane had come out to the scene of where Cosby ostensibly was on the side of the road to shine her car lights on him while he was fixing the tire. So those are three curious details right there.
Right. And there's even a fourth curious detail, and that is the crime in and of itself and what happened. So Stephanie Crane takes off, and when she's taking off, as she says, I'm listening to this, after moving approximately 15 meters, which is about 50 feet away, she hears a gunshot, turns back around, and drives back to Cosby's location. She saw a man running away, discovered Cosby was lying on the ground by the driver's side of the vehicle, lying in a pool of blood, and Ennis was shot point blank in the head, and he died at the scene. He was dead. He was dead already, sadly. Now, these are graphic details. So I'm warning with everybody talking about this, I'm not going to show any pictures or anything like that. Just out of respect for out of respect for the Cosby family, I wouldn't show it. But you can go look at the crime scene online. CNN actually got criticized for its coverage because they actually showed Ennis's body not covered up, and they showed him laying there in a pool of blood. They got criticized for that. Now, what they had labeled as the motive of this was a robbery that they were trying to steal. It was a robbery gone wrong. But the problem was that when the police arrived, Ennis still had his Rolex on. He had his pack of cigarettes, I believe, with him as well. He also had his money in his wallet. His credit cards were still there. More interesting enough, the car was there. If this man shot Ennis Cosby, and this is a 405 freeway. Now, I've been to Los Angeles myself once, and I believe I may have passed through that area where Ennis was killed. I had to if I was on the interstate I was going to Carson City to visit relatives. So I more than likely did. But that's a busy intersection.
Right.
I'm sure of it. And in the middle of the night, how did it get to be so how did no one see anything? And most importantly, where did this man run to after shooting Ennis? Because if this is a freeway, how does he jump off? Where does he go? Was there another car waiting for him? That's a very interesting question we got to ask.
Right. Well, see, the odd thing about this is that if you look at the supposed motive of robbery, this is late at night on the side of a road. You're talking about highway near a well-known, well-trafficked area. And the curiosity is this. I think what you have to do is I would say one of the things you want to do if you really want to go into detail is you have to look at whether there are a number of other crimes like this going on in LA at the time, or whether this is a usual crime. Is it usual for people to come up to individuals either on the 405 or any other highway? If their car is,
I said most definitely.
I'm agreeing
with you. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to look at, is this the usual kind of occurrence? Is it a usual kind of robbery? Is it a usual kind of crime that occurs? I'm looking at this and I'm going, if this occurred at about 1:30 a.m. at night, you're going to have somebody decide out of the blue that they're going to pull a gun, go up to a car, tell somebody to hightail it out of there, go up to somebody with the gun, say, I want some money or whatever it was that he asked for. And then reportedly, because it wasn't given fast enough, shoot somebody in the head and leave them there.
Right.
And not take credit cards or any cash or even the car itself. Again, a car that was about $130,000 in sales value. So you're not going to take anything. No watch, no credit cards, not even the car,
but
nothing.
But Al, what's even more? Here's another question we have to ask: why did the witness live? Why didn't he kill her? I guess we'll get to that in a little bit later.
Right.
But that's something else little tidbit we also got to add as to a strange occurrence is how Stephanie Crane wasn't robbed herself and also wasn't killed.
Mm-hmm.
She saw, I don't know if this man had a mask on or, well, I doubt she couldn't have identified him, obviously, in court, if he was wearing a mask or anything. So obviously she saw his face.
Well, supposedly he had a dark blue knit cap on. There was supposedly a dark
nothing to cover
blue
his
knit
face.
cap.
Was his face covered? A knit cap on his head? See, if it's not,
well, he had supposedly his knit cap on, and may have, again, you're talking about, it's about after 1 a.m. at night. So you have to imagine that if he's coming from the side of her window and ostensibly has a gun, you have to look at, there may have been light in her, if her door was open. I don't know that her door was open or any of her doors was open, say bringing in flooding the interior with light. Some cars are like that. So the question is whether she could see the assailant herself. So reportedly, I think one of the descriptions was a white male, I think late 20s, early 30s, initially. So if we are to believe the witness here, this guy comes up to her with a gun and says, "Get out of here now." And she hightails it out of there. And this guy then proceeds on to Cosby and ends up shooting him in the head, Ennis Cosby, and ends up shooting him in the head. When I add up all these details, what it leads me to, and I never gave much thought about this at the time. It wasn't until much later that I began to think a little about it. But what it says to me is, this doesn't strike me as a robbery. Not only because you didn't have his Rolex or credit cards or anything else taken, but from a logical perspective, how many people are going to wait until early morning hours to wait around the side of a major freeway for perhaps a car to break down so they can take out a gun and what? Rob them? Something doesn't add up there, right? This couldn't be something. If you look at this case, what it says to me is that this was planned. I don't think this was random at all. The belief, I believe, maybe with police or others, was that it is random. I don't think there's anything random about this at all. It couldn't be. From a logical perspective, it just doesn't make any sense. He supposedly shot because later on, after he was convicted, the man who was convicted, his name, of course, is Mikhail Markusin. He was 18 years old at the time. After this guy was convicted in 1998, in 2001, he decided to forego drop his appeal, and he confessed to the murder. He openly confessed to the murder.
Right. Well, so let's go back though before we get to the trial part. Let's talk about what transpires afterwards, because when the police arrive. Because what's interesting when I read even from Wikipedia page, now of course Wikipedia is it 100% reliable? No, but they have the articles that come from there, and the LAPD There have been a lot of issues with the Los Angeles Police Department. I see some of my friends, like some chick named Star. What's up, baby? I believe. Are you out in Los Angeles? Because I know she's on Dwan's show, and Dwan B. Shout out to my brother Dwan B. Is on that channel. She's the moderator on that channel. And if you're on LA, let me know some chick named Star, because I want to mention this because y'all know how the LAPD gets down. Al, you know about it too because you covered the Sam Cooke murder, Sam Cooke's death. The things that they have done, they are one of the most corrupt. I will say this, and I'm bold enough to say it. LAPD has a long history of corruption in its police department. Not to say that there aren't other police departments that don't have that level of corruption. Of course, there is, in New York with Serpico, you also have Chicago. Even here in New Orleans, we've had some issues with our police. The girlfriend's name, Jen. What's up, Jen Vickers? Jen, her name was Stephanie Crane. She was the friend. She's related to Sarah and Melissa Gilbert. Yeah. But Butterfly says, yes, they are a gang. The stuff they did with OJ, the stuff they did with Sam Cooke, even Robert F. Kennedy's case, even Biggie Smalls, they botched that. So you're from Fresno, but she's familiar with it. But the LAPD, I remember there were lawsuits filed where they were found to have a group called the Rough Riders that were inside the Los Angeles Police Department. And some of those officers were involved in the OJ Simpson case. Now, as it relates to Bill Cosby and Ennis Cosby's murder, the first thing the LAPD did was they didn't contact Bill Cosby. They contacted Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
Maxine Waters is close friend. She is close friends with Bill and Camille Cosby, but they wanted her to give them his phone number, give Bill Cosby's phone number, and she declined to do so. Now, I thought that's interesting, being that it's the Los Angeles Police Department. I thought the police could try and contact them in any way, shape, or form. I didn't know they would reach out to a congresswoman, but I thought that was interesting. Now, what she did, she asked Ed Lewis. Ed Lewis is the was the owner and creator of Essence Magazine. And Ed Lewis, like Maxine Waters, was a close friend of Bill Cosby and Bill and Camille Cosby. If I'm not mistaken, Bill and Camille at one point, or Bill Cosby actually had a stake in Essence in getting it created. If I'm not mistaken, Bill Cosby actually helped. He did a lot for a lot of people. There's a lot of things I've talked about, creating the Black Stuntmen's Association that Bill Cosby, one of the things he did. He was also helped create, he developed a show called This Is Where I Live for Dougie Doug. He gave Clarence Williams III, the actor in the Mod Squad who played Link. He just passed away this year. I knew him as Mr. Sims from Tales from the Hood. He gave him his big break, giving him a recommendation to Aaron Spelling. So there's a lot of stuff Bill Cosby had done behind the scenes, but I believe he owned a part of Essence Magazine, if I'm not mistaken, at one point, or helped get it developed. But how it relates to it, neither here nor there. Ed Lewis, they tried to inform him, but what the police did instead, and I think they could have done this beforehand, Al, they contacted CBS Studios.
Right.
And like I said, at that time,
Cosby was doing a show for CBS at the time.
Right. That's the show called Cosby. This was his other show after the Cosby Show. This was one he had on CBS, and it was shot at Kaufman Astoria Studios out in Queens, New York.
Yeah.
Right. And Cosby was on the set when he got a call by his producer, Joanne Curley Kerner, about the death of Ennis Cosby. Now, the Los Angeles police spoke with Bill Cosby, and they discouraged him, according to this. They tried to discourage him from coming out there to Los Angeles. But I want to see if I can. I have the pictures here. Now, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know they had this. But this is from a. Let me show this first. Oh, we hot and heavy here tonight. Y'all hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Donate to the Cash App. You see it at the bottom. And we're talking with veteran journalist Albert Lanier on the death of Ennis Cosby, the murder of Ennis Cosby. But I want to show you this, Al, and I want to show everybody this. I didn't know this was here, but this is important to look at.
Mm-hmm.
That's Stephanie Crane.
Mm-hmm.
She was called the fur coat woman, the woman in the fur coat. Now, this is on Hub Pages. This is a blog. This is where this is a picture here. I believe this is what they're saying. This is where the crime scene occurred. So, Al,
Now,
you may be more familiar.
Now, here's something I want to point out here.
All right.
If that is indeed the area of the crime scene,
yeah,
notice where it is in proportion to the major traffic going north and south. Notice where it is. Right. Notice where this is in proportion to the other traffic. See, it's off of. You can see that it's off of.
It's off the beaten path.
Right. It's off of the main thoroughfare. Right. So if that's where the crime scene occurred, again, the point that I make is this: how likely is it that someone is going to be waiting in this area, if this is ostensibly this crime scene? How likely it is that someone is going to be waiting in this area at 1 a.m. or after 1 a.m. with the gun to just randomly rob people whose cars are broken down, if their cars are broken down? Because you have to ask, the question you have to ask is, why did this guy decide to go and do this? Right? I mean, he did write a letter. Mikhail Markosov, who was a Russian immigrant, and he was an 18-year-old at the time. He did write a letter confessing to having killed Ennis Cosby.
And he claimed racial prejudice. That was something else. But still, it's still odd. And it goes to something I'm going to talk about too, because everything here, ladies and gentlemen, this is a key word that we're going to be talking about, that I'm going to mention again. It's timing. The timing of it, like when I talk about the accusations against Bill Cosby, the timing of it all, when he had his Netflix show, his Netflix deal, he was going back on NBC to do a show where he was playing a grandfather, and Diane Carroll was going to play the grandmother. Around that time, that's when these accusations started. So keep that in mind, it's timing, because something else very interesting happened. And all of this occurred in 1997. Now, I don't think that this man went there to rob Ennis Cosby. And I quote Baba Dick Gregory. I know he's even said that this guy, he's been on record with Brother Ron Hurd and others where he has said that this was a hit. A lot of people speculate it's a hit because just the stuff that Bill Cosby was trying to do, like buy NBC in 1992 and 93. That's something that people have talked about. But I don't want to go there at this point. But I do want to, but there is something very interesting, is that after all of this, it changed Bill. We know, and I'm sure like any parent, it changed them. It was a life-changing moment. But this is where supposedly the crime scene is. And that's Ennis. This is somebody's blog. That's the crime scene supposedly, and that's supposed to be Stephanie Crane. Now this is from his blog. He has different stuff in here. Now he even has some questions. Let's examine several of the more bizarre points of this event. A carjacker that only stakes out victims in rural areas. Did I mention how deserted this road was? And is barely pulled off to the road to change a flat or wait for a tow truck. His car was a good way out in the right lane when he parked. You call a woman you barely know to help you change a tire in the middle of the night. That woman shows up dressed in an expensive fur coat and high heels to help change the tire. This is what Dick Gregory was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I just mentioned. She's not, notice she has no change of clothes. That's how you come out to change a tire. Now, I have no evidence, and I'm not saying that Stephanie Crane helped murder Ennis Cosby. That's not what I am saying. What I'm saying is that according to this information, I think it's odd that if she got a phone call, and I'm wondering, was she already home? Even if she was already home by the time Ennis Cosby called, if I remember correctly, she had made her way home. She would have still probably changed her clothes because you're not gonna mess up your fur coat. I don't know a woman that's gonna mess up their expensive, get alone their shoes. They got on high heels. They're not gonna come out there help. They're gonna have. My mom used to carry around flip flops in the back of her car, slippers, whenever she had to take her heels off and stuff, because she wanted to rest comfortably when she got inside her Beamer.
Well, women do that all the time. They go to work. They bring certain shoes with them. So they bring like sneakers, and I know some women that will bring different shoes.
Yeah.
They'll come in with, I don't know, different kind of, I wouldn't say high heels, but different kind of shoes, and then put on sneakers or some flats later on.
Right.
Unusual.
But let's do this. But let's do this because I want to show everybody this. There's a pit. Remember what I stopped on, and I said that the LAPD tried to stop Bill Cosby from coming out there, Bill and Camille, from flying out to Los Angeles. This is, and this you can tell. Hold on, I want to show you. Yeah, women always carry their shoes. I know women.
Right.
But here,
let's look at this. Let's look at this holistically.
But before you do that, I want to show everybody this. Remember, this is a picture. That's Dr. Cosby. That's his daughter, Erin. Erin, I believe, is the oldest daughter. And that's Camille. And they are getting in the car, ready to head to the airport to go to Los Angeles. So there was no way they were not going to go out to. There was no way they were not going to not be in LA. They were going to Los Angeles. There's no way they were not going to be there. So they flew out to Los Angeles. You can see there, that's the crime scene to the left where the mouse is. If I zoomed in, I don't want to show. They have Ennis's body spread out like that. That's why I didn't want to show it. I thought it might have been covered up, but y'all can look at it if you want. I won't click on it. But Al, you were about to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, here's the thing. Let's kind of wrap this up by looking at this holistically. And I'll come to a conclusion. You have a man who flew out to LA to see his friend Stephanie Crane. So he at about 1:30 a.m. or so in the morning, certainly after 1 o'clock in the morning, he has a flat tire on his Mercedes SL convertible. And he wants his friend to come out, Stephanie, to help him with changing the tire. And he wants her to shine her car lights on him while he changes the tire. Now, again, this isn't an irrational detail, right? there's logic to this. It makes sense. But that's one of the first things I question is like, okay, you want her to come out and shine her car light on you while you're fixing this tire. Right? So,
Right.
in my view, my point is this. If what you noted about the car is true, and it could be driven on in spite of a flat tire. In other words, that a flat tire would not have disabled the car from being driven. If we are to posit that, we have to ask, but even if that, so we have to ask, why then was he in that location with supposedly a flat tire at that time of the night? And then asking somebody to come out in
early hours of the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning.
In the wee hours of the morning is a good way to put it, to come shine her car light on. Because you noted that they had actually been out earlier that night, right?
Right.
Okay. Right. What's interesting is that he wanted her to come and shine the car light on him while he was fixing the flat, right? Not try to get help. Not try to call somebody to come pick him up. But to come there and shine a light on the car. I mean, I look at this and I go, why not simply call for help from AAA or some kind of service? I mean, you could probably call somebody to get the car towed even, right? At that time of the night, it's possible.
Right. Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going, instead of asking for help, instead of asking for any help, and your car supposedly has this flat tire, you're going to call your friend to come and shine the car light on it while you're fixing the tire. And the friend then shows up, supposedly in a fur coat and heels. Now, if she's just shining a car light on this flat tire, then it doesn't really matter what she's wearing, right? But the problem is, if the whole point was to help him with the flat, why is she wearing a fur coat and heels to help him in any capacity fix a flat tire, even if she's not going to get down and actually help him fix the tire?
Right. Right. Butterfly says AAA takes forever. They do take a long time, but still.
It may, but here's the point. To my knowledge, he didn't call the service or any service. It may take forever. But if it took forever, say he called AAA, and then this guy, Marcus, comes along.
That's him there.
And then shoots him. And then comes, if he were to call AAA, AAA doesn't come, this Marcus guy comes out of the blue and shoots him, there's at least some logic that's there, right? You know,
right.
That's one thing. But that wasn't what happened. He asked his friend to come and not call help, not call anybody else, but to come herself with her car and shine her car lights on him, on his car and himself as he was fixing the tire. Again, it goes to what, to me, that's, and because she shows up in fur coat and heels. Like, again, even if you're not going to be helping actually fix the flat, which is what he didn't ask her to do that if what's reported is correct. You're going to show up in a fur coat and in heels to deal with a flat tire in any capacity? How is that helping it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, even if she had the fur coat, why don't you just leave it in the car?
Right.
I'm like, something doesn't add up. If they were out earlier and she returned home, right, and he calls her and he wants her to come out, She's gonna what? Grab the fur coat, grab heels and put it on and run out to the car? Does that make any sense? Why wouldn't you just wear the most comfortable thing you can, even if she had on whatever she was wearing, if it was a blouse or dress, you know, that doesn't add up. You have to wonder about that.
Now that I believe.
So she wants to look good when she's helping someone fix a flat tire. I mean, you know, I lived in LA and I know a good deal about Hollywood, but even by Hollywood standards, that doesn't make sense.
Right. Now, I believe the people that you see that are being escorted out, I believe that's members of the jury. That looks like Mrs. Cosby. Is that her? Is that them?
I felt very good about our evidence.
Okay. Well, they were being escorted out of the courtroom. Now, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Now,
right.
Now, let me tell you.
Here's the thing. The details of this don't add up. That's why I note this. The details don't add up because you have a car that's on. If that crime scene photo is accurate, you have a car that's on that side of the road, away from all the northbound and southbound traffic. You have a guy who comes out of the blue, comes up to this woman after she's arrived, Stephanie Crane, comes up to her with it. This guy comes up to her, what's his name? Mikhail Markasev comes up to her. Mikhail Markasev comes up to her with a gun and supposedly says, either open the door or I'll harm you or get out of here. She pulls out, drives off, and then drives back. And when the time she comes back, Ennis Cosby shot in the head and he's dead. And ostensibly, this guy is running down the street for the crime scene. So you have to ask yourself, so let's put this all together. What do we have here?
Well,
what we have here, it seems to me, excuse me, let me just put this all together because we're running out of time. What we have here is very clearly not random. Let's get that out of the way. I don't buy that this was a random crime or random robbery. Because if what Markasev supposedly said and what was noted at the trial and in other reporting about this, that he was shot because it took him too long to give him the money, that doesn't add up. Because you have to look at what was going on in regards to that scene. You're going to go to the trouble of being on that side of the road, pulling a gun on one person and saying, get out of here, going to another and then supposedly wanting money or valuables, what have you, and then shooting the person, not taking any valuables, not taking a watch, a Rolex that was on him, not taking credit cards, not taking cash, not even taking the car, which was worth thousands, which it was $130,000 car, not taking any of that and leaving. So you have to ask yourself, why are you going? If this is a spur of the moment crime, why did you leave empty-handed? And why did you bother killing the person? Let's just say it's racially motivated. If it's a robbery, if it's racially motivated, then what's the racial motivation? I mean, how did he know that there was going to be an African-American young man stranded near Mercedes-Benz at 1:30 a.m. in the morning of January 16, 1997 at the 405 near Mulholland Drive? How would this guy know? I mean, when you add up all those details, something doesn't add up. It can't be just random.
Detail
before you continue, we got an important piece of the puzzle that we have to talk about, because I mentioned how timing was important earlier in numbers, and it's all happening in 1997. To answer your question, Frank, how did they catch him? The National Enquirer put out a $100,000 reward for anyone that knew the whereabouts of who knew anything involved in this murder. And supposedly a friend of Mikhail Marx herself ratted him out for the reward money. So that's how that started. But what is important is what happened and transpired afterwards that you all need to look at and listen to. Now, does anybody know, or Al, does the name Autumn Jackson ring a bell?
Autumn Jackson, vaguely, yeah. Vaguely.
Autumn Jackson.
Very vague.
Now, in my book that I talk about, and I do mention this a little bit, but Autumn Jackson was a woman who in 1997, she had accused Bill Cosby of being her father due to an affair that she had with her mother. Her mother was a woman by the name of, her name was Sean Upshaw, and or Sean Brown. She has different aliases. And she's the only woman that Bill Cosby at that time had admitted to having an affair with on the record in the 90s. So I already knew Bill Cosby was creeping on his wife. That's not an issue. Celebrities, yes, it's wrong, maybe wrong from a moral standpoint, but we know celebrities have affairs all the time. But what I'm mentioning and why it's important was that she was arrested on federal charges for trying to extort $40 million from Bill Cosby in 1997. And she was arrested on January 20th, 1997. Ennis Cosby was murdered on what date?
January 16th, 1997.
So within 4 days, probably a little bit less than that. And she was not the only one arrested. And if you read if you see Tariq Nasheed's live stream he did on the Bill Cosby case a couple years back, he specifically mentions that two other individuals, you can look this up, who are also Russian. Her boyfriend, who's the father of her twins, was arrested as part of this. I believe he copped a plea deal. And another gentleman who is also Russian. I don't have their names in front of me right now.
Right.
But hold on.
You might want to go widespread. Yeah, you might want to go widespread.
All right. Excuse me. Because I have it shared here. So Autumn Jackson, Boris Sabas, and Jose Medina. They filed an appeal from the previous jury judgment for intending to extort money against Bill Cosby. And they were convicted of traveling across state lines to promote extortion, which is a federal crime, and conspiring to commit extortion. So Sabas was found not guilty of making extortionate threats, but Sabas, Medina, and Jackson were sentenced to 26, 63, and 3 months imprisonment, respectively, with each defendant's term of imprisonment to be followed by a 3-year period of supervised release. So they were convicted of threatening to injure another person's reputation with intent to extort money. Now, what's interesting, had they just had an attorney, or if had Autumn Jackson had an attorney, then she would have never been charged criminally with that, because attorneys, we negotiate with clients all the time for deals. But because she sent a fax demanding this from Bill Cosby, that's what happened. So, Al, the timing of this is what's having my antennas go off, because within 4 days she's arrested for extortion, and Bill Cosby's son
is killed at that same time. So 1997 was not the best year or a great year for Dr. Cosby.
Right. Well, again, let me just get to my conclusion.
Go ahead.
Again, when you look at the details in this case, the only conclusion that I can come up with, having looked at these details, curious details is what I called them earlier, is that this was clearly a planned and premeditated crime. And it was a planned and premeditated murder of Ennis Cosby. I don't believe that he was killed randomly. I don't believe it was an accident. And I don't believe it had anything to do with a robbery. He was targeted and he was killed. If you look at the method of his death, or the means of his death, or method, what happened in terms of his death, he was shot in the head. Normally, when you look at execution style crimes of any sort, they're usually headshots.
Right.
And because that's the simplest way to dispose of individuals through use of guns. If you're going to shoot somebody, if you're going to commit homicide by means of guns, pistol, rifle, what have you, that's the simplest way. And so it's very clear that he was targeted and he was executed. And if I look at the details of this, it's clear that you had to have somebody in. You look at Markusev and you look at this guy and you wonder, why would this guy suddenly out of the blue show up in this area with a gun, with a supposedly knit cap that was on, because the police recovered the knit cap and supposedly it had his fibers and his hairs in it. So this guy supposedly comes up. He's in the area where this is happening, 405 off of Mulholland Drive. He comes up to Stephanie Crane, who's a friend of Ennis Cosby, comes up to her driver's window, tells her essentially, get out of here. She gets out of there. He supposedly goes up to Ennis Cosby, and I guess we can only assume demands something from him in the way of material resources, money, credit cards, what have you. And ostensibly shoots him because he wasn't giving up his resources fast enough, and shoots him in the head.
Yeah. And this was
then runs off without taking anything. No watch, no credit card, no money, no nothing. Car. So if robbery was the motive, why was there no robbery after, post-mortem? I'm sorry, or post-murder. Why was no robbery post-murder or even pre-murder? Looks like nothing valuable had been taken. And so this guy is going to decide to basically commit a risky, even at that time of the night, it's still a risky murder. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about this case is Stephanie Crane. You have to wonder why she's there. Again, you have to wonder why, if Ennis Cosby had a flat tire, he doesn't call AAA. He doesn't call for any tow truck to come along. He doesn't call anyone but his friend, who shows up at the scenes reportedly in a fur coat and heels, which is a very impractical way of helping someone with a flat tire. Not only impractical, but if he needed her just to show up with the car to shine the car lights on him while he fixed the tire, it still makes no sense that she's going to show up there with a fur coat and heels. What this says to me was that she showed up because she was the witness. They needed a witness to this crime. Whoever planned this needed a witness. And it was clear she was the witness. And she was witness enough to place someone there. Now, she wasn't witness enough to have seen the murder. As you noted, ostensibly, she heard something and then went back. She returned. It's the most, even with the suspicious detail of her wearing a fur-coated heels, that's the most suspicious of all. You're told to leave because someone threatens to kill you. You panic and you leave. Then you hear something ostensibly, or if not hear, you're aware of it. You go back. Doesn't anyone question why she went back if her life was threatened? Suddenly she's panicked. Initially, she's panicked enough to leave. Then she's not too long afterwards, seconds later, she hears this. She's not panicked enough to turn the car around and drive back. However far she went.
Right. And then I'm looking at this.
Very quick. Apparently, she got brave real quick.
Yeah.
Right?
Very much so.
Because logically, if someone's threatening to kill you and they got a gun on you, you got to take that seriously. And ostensibly, she did, if we are to believe her. But she's afraid 1 second or 1 minute, and then not so afraid to drive back and discover. It's very clear to me why she was there. She's the eyewitness to what occurred. Not the eyewitness to the murder, but the eyewitness to the scene. In other words, she's there and provides enough. The question is, now, how accurate is this woman? How accurate is he? Is she telling the truth, or is she making all of this stuff up?
Well, you can look here on the Los Angeles Times, this article. I just Googled it, and she even didn't identify Markusev in the lineup. She said the man that killed Ennis, she failed to pick the defendant, Mikhail Markusev, out of a police lineup last year. She admitted that, and she selected another man as most resembling the person who accosted her, Bill Cosby. And she had a 2.5-hour testimony. What's interesting, though, is that the prosecution had another person come on and testify. She says that when she was under cross-examination from the deputy public defender, she said that his the characteristics resembled a guy that was with Markusev that night, named Eli Zachariah. Zachariah was another key prosecution witness with Markusev the night of the killing. So you have this confusion about who was there and what, how did he leave the scene and so forth, that I think is interesting. But was Crane even, a great witness? According to just looking at this article, she misidentified she didn't identify the defendant. So that leaves her credibility. They call it.
Yes, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. But see, that's the problem is she's the witness. There's no other witness directly to what occurred. We don't even have a witness to the murder. Right?
Other than that,
see, there's no witness that puts Markusev here. Here's the thing. She doesn't view Markusev killing Ennis Cosby. She doesn't see it.
Right.
All she sees is someone coming to her window saying, "Get out of there." She drives the car out. She gets scared. She drives out. Then she turns back.
Right.
So, as I would say in my summation, I believe that Ennis Cosby was targeted and he was killed. The reasons will probably be debatable and arguable, and I can't state at this time what the reasons might be. But it's very clear to me this young man was targeted and he was killed.
Most definitely.
And it had nothing to do with a robbery. Stephanie Crane needed to be there as someone to at least see the scene, not to identify the killer. See, that's important. See, if they wanted her to see the killer, whoever planned this guy could have come from somewhere else and shot Cosby. They didn't want anyone to see his death. That's why she had to supposedly drive out of there if she did that. Again, we have her word that she did that. I'm not aware there are any witnesses to her having fled the scene. We have her word. And again, that's important. When you look at a case like this, you have three individuals that were ostensibly involved here. You have Ennis Cosby as the victim. You had supposedly Mikhail Markasev, who is the, at this point, confessed killer and convicted killer. And you have Stephanie Crane. The problem is, we don't really know if Mikhail Markasev actually pulled the trigger. And we don't even know whether he was there. We don't know whether he was there. He might have been there. But the question is, Markasev was with a couple of other people. What seems likely to me was that Markasev was probably in, he might have been in the company of the real actual killer. He might have been. It's very clear to me that if Markasev did it, there's no real reason for him to have done it. Even if this was done out of racial animus, what are the odds that a well-to-do African American is going to break down on the 405 near Mulholland Drive in a $130,000 Mercedes SL convertible? Yeah. And he just happens to have a gun and wearing a nip cap, ostensibly, and goes to rob him and doesn't, just shoots him. If it's racially motivated. If it were racially motivated, you pick one of the most difficult kinds of things to do, kinds of crimes to do. I mean, no one's going to hang out at that area at that time of the night just to commit a crime. It's very clear that this was a planned and premeditated crime, that Ennis Cosby was targeted, and that Stephanie Crane was a part of it somehow. Very clear. I think she was there to be a useful, not quite witness to the crime, but witness to the scene. They clearly did not want anyone to watch the crime. They did not want. And so it's kind of odd that this woman supposedly shows up, fur coat and heels to help fix a tire, is told, get out of there, gets out of there, and then comes back. So she's scared and panicked 1 minute, and then not caring about the consequences or her life the next. That doesn't add up. It's very clear that this is not a random crime, that it's a premeditated murder. The reasons I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate, but it's very clear that this was premeditated and planned. And that's my conclusion in regards to this case.
Well, my conclusion is the same. I think that this was a premeditated murder. I don't believe that Ennis was just randomly killed, for robbery reasons or maybe even racial reasons, although those certainly may play a factor because just the timing of it all with all the stuff that was going on with Bill Cosby at this point now, I'm speculating as well because is there evidence that directly shows that Autumn Jackson was involved with Ennis Cosby's death? No. Or Stephanie Crane? No. But the timing of it all and the facts and circumstances are what's troubling. And very interesting enough that all of this was going on. And when Cosby has his new TV show, there's talks of him, of course, still at that point trying to buy the National Broadcasting Company. And a lot of people have always speculated that whenever Black artists or well-to-do Black men go for some type of intellectual property, there's something that mysteriously happens to them or their loved ones. Again, just focusing on, but if we focus on the facts and circumstances and what we have looked at and from what Al has commented, and I have commented on, just looking at that, I think there's enough there to say that there was more involved to what happened to Ennis Cosby that night, and possibly more individuals that were involved in his death as well. And I'll leave it at that. That's my opinion, and I stick to it. So we'll see if we have any questions. If anybody has questions, a lot of people were saying it was Illuminati. Probably.
I think that guy saw my Secret Society show. Apparently,
I saw it. But she saw it. Yeah, that butterfly is she. Yeah. Cheryl says connect the dots. Yeah. She also says that this Stephanie fur coat chick is suspicious. You know, something else, Al, I'll point out too. Stephanie Crane, we stated she's tied to Hollywood, being that her sisters, Melissa and Sarah.
But I think
not just Sarah Gilbert.
She's one of the keys to what happened. I don't think this could have been pulled off without her.
Yeah. But right, I don't think you could have, certainly more to the story than what has been told, and I think Bill Cosby even knows it. I think Bill and Camille probably know it, but won't say anything more than what's happened. But you know, that's why we're here and we look into it. And I don't have too much more to say, but other than what I will say, so I'm looking at this now. I don't know how true this is, but when I was showing you guys those pictures earlier from that website, this website is also saying that Eli Zachariah, who was supposedly with Markasev that night, was the son of a hitman known as Joseph Zachariah. This is what it says here. I don't know anything about that. I don't know who Joseph Zachariah is. That's hella interesting. Again, I don't even know what happened. If this guy was with, here's another thing we have to ask ourselves. If this man was with, Eli Zachariah was with Markasev, Mikhail Markasev, then was he ever charged, or why wasn't he sentenced? Because if he were with him, then that would make him an accomplice, allegedly. So that's a question we have to ask. Was there anything done to him? So
I think that's speculation, but I just want to say at this point, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. No problem.
Right.
But I wasn't. It's not speculation because he was a prosecutorial witness at the trial. So he says he was with them. I'm wondering, did they offer a plea deal with him? I don't have that information available in front of me.
That's what I mean.
But normally but I'm speaking from a perspective as a lawyer. What will typically happen is if they find anybody that was with you when a crime takes place, they will question and possibly or even arrest that person unless somebody talks.
Right.
Typically as to what happened. So that's what I mean by that. I don't know. I've been very careful with my words because I've said it's speculation and I said I don't have that evidence, but I do think it's interesting, the timing of everything that happened. And I say the same thing with the Autumn Jackson situation. So, all right. Well, I know I've kept saying it was an hour and we went over a little bit, but I thank you nonetheless, Al, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Thank you. Well, I'm now new on Substack. I wrote an article, wasn't true crime, but you can find me on Substack now. Albert Lanier, I think it's albertlanier.substack.com. And that's substack.com. I also have my blog, which is on Medium, and you can find that at medium.com/@thedoctor50. That's medium.com/@thedoctor50. My 4th anniversary piece is there where I looked into Bobby Fuller. I wrote about Bobby Fuller. So again, that's my Substack, albertlanier.substack.com, I believe, and that's substack.com. And then my blog, which is at medium.com/@thedoctor50.
All right, very
And I'm
well.
also on Facebook if you want to reach me.
He
All
is
right.
on Twitter at Critic Inc. All right,
Yeah.
Al. Well,
Critic INC.
you take
All
it
right.
easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. All right.
Good night.
And guys, this concludes our broadcast for tonight. Oh, this was great. I enjoyed doing the celebrity deaths with him. We will do our next celebrity death episode. I don't know when I'll reach out to him, but we're gonna actually try to do one. Our next one will more likely be on Billie Holiday, and we all know about the Billie Holiday movie that's come out, the United States versus Billie Holiday, that's on Hulu. It was directed by Lee Daniels. I'm not a fan of Lee Daniels and the message he promotes and what he's been pushing, but I will give praise where praise is due. The movie was great in terms of its treatment of how the United States treatment of Billie Holiday by the Justice Department, the things that they did. They didn't specifically get into her death, although they did talk about it. For those that have seen it or have not seen it, I don't want to give the spoilers away, but it's been out for a few months, so you probably should have seen it by now. But they do talk about her death and what happened very briefly. But essentially, it's believed that they killed. Well, a lot of people believe that they killed her. So we'll go and deal into that next one. Who owns NBC? Well, at that time, General Electric owned the National Broadcasting Company, Butterflies, and General Electric, I believe, of course, they're not just an appliance company. It's just like Brunswick. Brunswick isn't just a bowling alley. Brunswick has Brunswick Records. There are subsidiaries that come out of Brunswick. General Electric is a conglomerate. So they deal in aviation, they deal with healthcare, power, renewable energy, digital industry, additive manufacturing, locomotives, and venture capital and finance. They owned NBC at that time. They have a net income as of 2020 of $5.2 billion. Their revenue is $75.6 billion. That's a lot of money. They've been around for 129 years. These white folks got deep pockets. Like the wealthy people here in New Orleans, the Bourbon elite, as I call them, everything that's on Bourbon Street and Uptown, that's old money. Those families have been around for years. Those pockets go back hundreds of years, go back for a couple of centuries. I don't want to speculate. I'm not sure if General Electric does military defense work. I could be wrong. Excuse me. You say about 500 years. Well, I'm talking about the immediate families here in New Orleans, like their family members. Of course, some of them are wealthy landowners. We know how they got that land. People that were tied in the oil industry, of course, more or less in the oil industry, that's like in Texas and so forth, although they've had them out here in parts of Louisiana as well. Families that have set up dynasties, families that are tied in politics, like the Landrew family or the Long family, things of that nature. We just had Edwin Edwards, who died. Uh, Edwards, Edwards actually, I don't know much about him as far as how deep his money was. I know he was a lawyer and Navy guy. But a lot of these families, like I said, their pockets are deep. But look, I've been on here for a little longer. This was a special random topics on Sunday. So Tuesday, I haven't decided what we'll do. We'll see where the show goes. But you guys be safe, be blessed. Yeah, computer robots, you're late. But we were talking about Ennis Cosby and his death. Thank you, some chick named Star. I appreciate it. I'd appreciate it more if you guys would please donate to the Cash App. That Cash App link is at the bottom. Gavin Richard Esquire. Hit it up, please. Also, Google Pay or PayPal if you like. Or you can also subscribe to the Patreon. We have Patreon here. You can join that for more videos and exclusive content. And also, you can advertise with me, all right? Well, that's it for tonight, guys. I'm going to go get me some yogurt, I guess, to eat. And peace and respect to you, to Derek, everybody. Where's Rosalind? Rosalind is usually here. I saw Jen was here. Glad y'all enjoyed the show. I really do. All right. I'm sorry. Looking at my phone. All right. Yeah, you got to get them spices. NawniesCreoleBlends.com. Butterflies, email me. I guess you could order them through the stores too, but hit me up and email me if you'd like. But that's the website. All right, guys, let me get on out of here. I'm going to listen to Tariq's broadcast in a second, all right? Holla. Peace.